do hope that so far your Wednesday is turning out to be as great as ours is. Good morning and welcome to KBC Channel 1. The show is Good Morning Kenya. That discussion touching on education sector is on right now. Of course, we've had concerns from parents and other stakeholders in the education sector as far as the fee is concerned. That's number one. Number two, the price of textbooks. Where exactly should the pressure be? And number two, are we so much after education for the sake, or are we prioritizing quality education even as we move towards our Vision 2030? Of course, I will not be doing this alone. I've got an able panel of three gentlemen in studio this morning. Together, they will help us understand what is happening in this sector and what is the way forward. At Samuel Njoroge is my Twitter handle. Samuel Njoroge is my Facebook page. 20511 remains to be our SMS line. Begin with the initials GMK. Shoot your questions, feedback, comments, all of it appreciated right here. With pleasure, I will introduce my panel this morning. I will start with my immediate right here. We've got David Owero, who is the chairman, Kenya Publishers Association. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. To the middle, we've got a gentleman. His name is Eric Kimonyi. Now, Eric is a student at the Technical University of Kenya, the third best student in the 2008 Kenya Certificate for Primary School Education. Of course, he is a bright mind, having gone through Lenana Boys, but he will help us understand what exactly the student goes through when all this politics and hula baloo is happening at the top. Karibu sana, Eric.
Thank you so much.
Then we've got Darius Wanyama, the gentleman seated straight ahead. He is a consultant who has been involved with various governments in the areas of human capital and education. He is an expert, and of course, his mind is well timely on this set this morning to help us understand what is happening in the education sector. Welcome, Emmy.
Thank you.
I have your permission to call you Emmy?
Thank you, yeah.
All right, so welcome to the studio, all of you, and feel at home.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start basically with an overview of what's happening with education. I'll start with you, Emmy. What is your feel of the education sector as it is right now?
Thank you, Sam. I think currently in this country we've reached at a crossroads whereby we're not very sure of where we want to go, although we know where we've actually come from. And the challenge with this is that, if I may quote Mwalimu Nyerere, one time he was asked about attacking Uganda, and he said, in Swahili he said, sababu tunazo, nia tunayo, na uwezo tunao. You know, he said, you know what, we've got the reasons to attack. He said we've got the ability and we've got the intention.
Right.
But in this country we're at crossroads. We know the reasons why we're in what we are in. And then secondly, we've got the ability to change. But do we have the will? I doubt.
Great. We know the reasons. We have the ability to change, but do we have the will? That remains to be the bigger question. I'll cross over to Eric. Your brief overview of the education sector as it is right now.
Okay, what I can say about the education system right now.
This young Brit thinks her identical twin sister is a slob.
She is so messy. She wrecks everything. She breaks everything. She ruins my clothes. She ruins the whole apartment. She's wrecking my life. Sometimes, you know, it feels a bit like I've got a second mum.
What would you like to see your sister do differently in terms of her being messy?
I'd like you to tidy things up, clean things, and not break anything. You need to calm down, stop being like an old woman.
I take it you're all her clothes.
I like being a twin. I like being a twin.
Do you share everything?
Yeah. Pretty much.
What about men?
Is there something like oversharing? And what happens when couples have different levels of sharing information?
How's business? Everything is good. We've had a wonderful year in the business, so no complaints.
That's great. At least you've been able to manage your cash flow issues. And your father-in-law, what? That was very kind of him.
What?
Hi, darling. Oh, hi, darling. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, I'm so sorry for keeping you. It's all good. Simba, are we ready to go? Yes, please. See you.
Samantha.
What?
You're the one who told Karen about the loan.
No.
Then why is she saying that you're the one who told her?
Okay, maybe I did confide in her.
Why do you go around telling your girlfriends about our problems? You know the other day you updated some status on Facebook, eh?
That had nothing to do with you. I was just expressing my emotions.
This is our topic of the day and our bold conversation.
Hii studio sasa hivi ndio kila kitu kwake, ni kama ulimwengu wake mpya.
Unafanyika nini ndani?
Chawi.
Najua mimi naitwa Cheche Mtungi, sawa? Na studio yetu inaitwa Mtungi Studio. Kama una sasa na masharobo sijali. Sasa ndio masharobo, unasikia? Unachukuliaje? Mimi sio poa.
Sikujua kama ninapiga picha.
Mama, tunahitaji mtu kwenye kamera. Labda siku moja utakuja kupanga. Utakuwa salama.
Usinishike.
Samahani.
Yangu, maisha yangu.
Mobile banking is a new gospel, a new financial gospel being adopted into the African economic paradigms.
Mobile banking cannot phase out traditional banking. Why? Because traditional banking has actually partnered with mobile banking facilities in order to provide services.
Whether they take partnerships or not, the exclusion of these telecommunication industries and structures is still rampant in the entire Africa.
Traditional banking offers better credit facilities.
Nitakuwa naingia katika maeneo ya Temeke ya moto band kama kawaida.
Sema unajifanya bingwa wa kupenda na kumbe bingwa wa kutenda kuliko kupenda.
Nitakupwele pweta mie.
What's that? That's not me. I'm Njoro. Njoro. Like there's a deep tone between the Njo and the Ro. Njoro. Njoro. Come on.
Yani hizo pesa zangu kusomesha ndio kunileta mkuja mbadiliko mpaka kimila.
Wacha unakwenda mbali. Si umuulize yani chai tangu niweke hapo sitapoa.
Oh, did you just call this tea? You brought this for me?
Sini yako kwani nani anaelewa?
No, I don't.
Wewe nakuuliza hivyo.
You get your cappuccino?
Wa China tena.
Oh, so you're expecting me to take this trash, huh? Come on, you take it yourself. Take it yourself. Huh? Take it yourself. I'm not going to take that.
This young Brit thinks her identical twin sister is a slob.
She is so messy. She wrecks everything. She breaks everything. She ruins my clothes. She ruins the whole apartment. She's wrecking my life. Sometimes, you know, it feels a bit like I've got a second mum.
What would you like to see your sister do differently in terms of her being messy?
I'd like you to tidy things up, clean things, and not break anything. You need to calm down, stop being like an old woman.
I take it you all the clothes.
I like being a twin. I like being a twin.
Do you share everything?
Yeah. Pretty much.
What about men?
The entire
We do hope that so far your Wednesday is turning out to be as great as ours is. Good morning and welcome to KBC Channel 1. The show is Good Morning Kenya. That discussion touching on education sector is on right now. Of course, we've had concerns from parents and other stakeholders in the education sector as far as the fee is concerned. That's number one. Number two, the price of textbooks. Where exactly should the pressure be? And number two, are we so much after education for the sake, or are we prioritizing quality education even as we move towards our Vision 2030? Of course, I will not be doing this alone. I've got an able panel of three gentlemen in studio this morning. Together, they will help us understand what is happening in this sector and what is the way forward. At Samuel Njoroge is my Twitter handle. Samuel Njoroge is my Facebook page. 20511 remains to be our SMS line. Begin with the initials GMK. Shoot your questions, feedback, comments, all of it appreciated right here. With pleasure, I will introduce my panel this morning. I will start with my immediate right here. We've got David Owero, who is the chairman, Kenya Publishers Association. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. To the middle, we've got a gentleman. His name is Eric Kimonyi. Now, Eric is a student at the Technical University of Kenya, the third best student in the 2008 Kenya Certificate for Primary School Education. Of course, he is a bright mind, having gone through Lenana Boys, but he will help us understand what exactly the student goes through when all this politics and hula baloo is happening at the top. Karibu sana, Eric.
Thank you so much, Samuel.
Then we've got Emmy Darius Wanyama, the gentleman seated straight ahead. He is a consultant who has been involved with various governments in the areas of human capital and education. He is an expert, and of course, his mind is well timely on this set this morning to help us understand what is happening in the education sector. Welcome, Emmy.
Thank you.
I have your permission to call you Emmy?
Thank you, yeah.
All right, so welcome to the studio, all of you, and feel at home.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start basically with an overview of what's happening with education. I'll start with you, Emmy. What is your feel of the education sector as it is right now?
Thank you, Sam. I think currently in this country we've reached at a crossroads whereby we're not very sure of where we want to go, although we know where we've actually come from. And the challenge with this is that, if I may quote Mwalimu Nyerere, one time he was asked about attacking Uganda, and they said, in Swahili he said, sababu tunazo, nia tunayo, na uwezo tunao. You know, he said, you know what, we've got the reasons to attack. He said we've got the ability and we've got the intention.
Right.
But in this country we're at crossroads. We know the reasons why we're in what we are in. And then secondly, we've got the ability to change. But do we have the will? I doubt.
Great. We know the reasons. We have the ability to change, but do we have the will? That remains to be the bigger question. I'll cross over to Eric. Your brief overview of the education sector as it is right now.
Okay, what I can say about the education system right now, it has been more diluted. It's focusing mostly on the theoretical part, preparing students for actually a theory world, which does not really diluted.
Right.
And so many opportunities opened, which are training students and releasing them to the world, yet they're half-baked.
They're half-baked.
Yes.
A diluted system. David, over to you.
Maybe one or two things. Number one is that education is one of the most critical elements of any progressive societies. And education has played a very central role in getting Kenya to where it is today. There's a recognition in our constitution as to the central role education plays in nationhood and in achieving what we want to become as a nation. Vision 2030 articulates very, very well the centrality of education, and not just education, but providing quality education. And we know that as we move towards achieving Vision 2030, human resource, which would, the kind of human resource competitive globally, ought to be knowledge-based. And the way you gain knowledge, and if we have to compete effectively, even as a nation, by developing a knowledge-based economy, it basically means that we have to have, a sound education system. The unfortunate thing is that what we have seen over the years is, and I like what the student is, he's using the word dilution. And I'm glad that's coming from a student, because it's somebody who has been in the system and is still in the school system. It is a young man who was the third best in the country a couple of years ago. So he is talking from experience.
Right.
And he is saying that he knows that the education system is not what it is today. It's not providing the skills necessary, to prepare them for the marketplace. And I think that that's a tragedy. And what I would like to say is I think there's a disconnect between our aspiration as a nation and what we say education should do to help us reach that aspiration, and what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly.
From legislation to implementation of education in schools.
So the talk never matches the walk.
Not at all.
There is a disconnect. I'd like to come to you, Emmy. You did say that we know the reasons and we have the will. Let's hold right there and look at the reasons. What are they that have made the education system in this country be what it is today?
Sam, I would like to address two approaches here. In terms of education, a lot of time in this country, when we talk about education, we tend to look at the curriculum. But the curriculum is only one part of a whole system. And I like what David talks about, a knowledge-based economy, meaning that we need to have system thinking, a system approach to issues. Now, why do I say that? When you talk about education, you're talking about three pillars here. You've got the soft issues, which you've got the people, the teachers here. And the key thing here is that teachers are the main drivers, the main players in this system. They determine the pace of how everything goes. They say that if you give out peanuts, you can only employ monkeys. Now, if you don't employ tigers and you feed them on peanuts, you'll only get a monkey output with time. Now, what do I mean? That if we're employing people we believe are competent, then we need to give them the tools to also work. We need to recognize that they are human beings, they've got a life to live, they've got families, they are parents, and they're also stakeholders in the education, both as parents and as teachers. Now, that's a key plank of the challenge that we face. If you look at the at the UN report on the Kenyan system, the World Bank report, you realize one thing, that absenteeism is a key challenge at the moment.
Right.
And this is the whole problem across each and every sector of our economy, whether it is at the courts, you have a judge arriving late or coming not prepared. If it is on the roads, the traffic policeman will turn up and do other things that are very far from what is actually expected to do. We have an ethical problem, whether it's in the medical profession, whether it is in politics. So we have an ethical problem. How do we address the ethics and the ethos? A good example is Mauritius. Mauritius is a country whereby you walk into Mauritius, you see a European standard country, a developed world, but the work ethic is Asian. I mean, the way they approach work, the way they do things, you know that these people know where they're coming from, they know where they're going to. Now, that's the most important aspect of it, the people. Then the other bit is the systems and the procedures in place. And then the infrastructure. How do you deliver that? So curriculum, yes. I would say like Eric says, he's talking about dilution. If you look at the curriculum, it's not a diluted curriculum. The problem is, how do we deliver that? We have the manpower, we have the right people. And part two of this, part B of that is three other things. In education, you've got the students and the parents, the environment at home. And Professor Munene Machari of USIU has actually documented this quite well. And then second, you've got the government, the education officers, that's another group. And then third, you've got the community. And the community here, you're talking about the sponsors, the community in which we operate. And you have situations whereby parents at home are not creating that conducive environment. we've heard of situations whereby parents creating a situation where the kids cannot succeed in exams so that they are not forced to pay fees to continue. Then you've got government, and government here you're talking about, look at the Ministry of Education in terms of the structure of the Teacher Service Commission and the ministry. Of course, we've had quite a bit of hullabaloo on the fees, the issue of fees, the ministry saying, no, we're going to punish, give us the names, we'll punish.
Yeah.
But the truth is that they are not the employers of the head teachers.
Yeah.
So that is hot gas, hot air. We need to streamline certain things. And then on top of that, we are saying, look, follow the fees guidelines. But we know that the prices, the Kenya shilling is not where it was. So we have a lot of dishonesty there. Now look at the quality assurance and the inspectorate at the Ministry of Education. As a Kenyan, there are 4 people that I don't like to meet, or if I was a Kenyan teacher. One is the police, if I think I'm on the wrong. The way they treat you, the way they handle you. The other one is the KPLC guy who comes to you when he suspects you've not paid your bill.
Yeah.
Then the third one is the water guy when he's come to disconnect your water. Now the third one is the city inspectorate. The fourth one.
Yes.
Is the city inspectorate guys. You don't want to see that guy come into your car when you've not paid for your parking. The moment you see that. Now, and that's unfortunately the relationship between the inspectorate, which is now under the quality assurance arm of the ministry, and the teachers. A very underfunded section, very demoralized, very understaffed. They make reports, some of them that don't make sense. They make reports that cannot be applied, and even the good reports are not effected.
Yes. A very good punchline you gave, that if you want to give peanuts, then have some monkeys with you.
Yes.
But if you get tigers and feed them on peanuts, eventually you get a monkey output. Eric, David did echo your point on dilution. Emmy says the problem is not the dilution, it's how delivery is done during school. Having gone through the system, right now you're in campus. Do you feel any disconnect between what you did in primary school, what you did in secondary school, and what you're now pursuing in campus, Eric?
Okay, what I can say about that is that I spent quite a lot of time, like 8 years, while you're doing so many things, but in the end you're going to focus on one thing. Because in primary you study around 5 subjects, that is. High school you start with 13, I started with 13 in Form 1, and then now you choose up to 7. And now when you get into campus, you still have 2 years more to study a broad area, and then you have 2 other years to focus. So I wish it could be possible for the education system to give you more time to focus on your area of specialization, or maybe your area of interest, because this will enable you to have quite a good time for you to explore anything that you need to know that will prepare you well for the job market. Yes.
Prepare you well for the job market.
Yes.
I'll be throwing a point you've raised to Emmy in terms of starting broad and going narrow, but I'd like to come to David now. He's the chairman of Kenya Publishers Association, so let me get straight to the point. What's happening with textbooks, David? Are the prices up? Have they been exaggerated?
Okay, would you allow me to probably just go back one step and mention something?
Okay.
That Emmy talked about. Part of the big problem, the crisis in the education sector is actually one symptom of a much broader malady, much broader problem that we have in this country. It's actually, just a symptom of almost every other sector that you can talk about. Only that education, is like the center of the of gravity. Now, and it basically shows the weakness we have in terms of connecting dots. What we want to say, where we are, and how we connect the dots on how we will get there. And that is a big problem with leadership. That we never put our money where our mouth is. And as a result, you find that we are always reacting. And, good leadership is not a reactive leadership, because it's a leadership that develops foresight and is able to, develop a strategy on how we shall get from where we are to where we want to go and manage whatever resources that are available effectively and efficiently to deliver us, to that place. So I would say that part of the problem we are having is a crisis of leadership. And you know very well, the African saying that says that fish rot from the top. But the problem we have is a government that refuses to perform at the level it is expected to perform, and then blames everybody else, the citizenry, we blame the publishers, we blame everybody else, whereas the problem is a systemic problem. The reason we have officers earning salaries from taxes that we pay is so that they can deliver to the level of our expectations. And we are saying that if we were to score our overall leadership on a scale of A to F, you guess what part, what side they will be, will be scoring at. We probably would be scoring a D. And I think I'm saying this not for anybody to react, but it's to conduct self-assessment and recognize that as a nation, we have much greater potential than we are exhibiting. We are performing at a very, very low level. And if you compare with countries that, that we were at par, or even slightly better, at independence in the mid-60s. Singapore is an extremely good example. Their GDP per capita today is about 64,000 shillings. Kenya's GDP per capita today is $1,300. What is the key difference? The key difference is that at independence, they decided that there are three things that we will not compromise on. One is the rule of law. If you look at Kenya, we are a state of almost anarchy, moving from lawlessness to lawlessness. The second thing they concentrated on was education, and decided that we will have the best possible education system and quality of education in the world. And we know that Singapore tops the world in areas of science, maths, and all that. Then they decided that every single Singaporean will have the highest possible quality education. And the third thing they said is that we will ensure that we concentrate on our economy. Now, if you look at the state of Kenya, you tell me about the law, we are a very lawless society. When you talk of education, we are tottering on the brink of collapse. When you talk of economy, we are tottering on the brink of collapse. And let's not brag and say that we are doing well. I mean, if our GDP per capita is 1,300 and we brag, it means that our standards are very, very low. And if you have leadership whose standards is that low, there is a very big problem, because the rest of the people you can never rise beyond your leadership. So that's number one. Now, coming to the textbooks.
I would like, because this textbook issue, I'd like it to be a standalone.
Okay.
I'd like it to be a standalone for some specific reasons. But I'd like to go to Emmy. Some key points raised by Eric and David. And because you've consulted widely on education, number one, is the education we're offering in Kenya quality? And number two, as Eric says, is there any sense in starting broad and narrowing down?
You're right, Sam. I want to approach it like this. The idea about dilution is not just because of the education system itself. I keep saying, I know, like sometimes you've got televised addresses at the University of Nairobi, for example, and there's a visiting guest, and you discover that students cannot express themselves in English fluently. And we say, what are the universities doing? It's not the work of universities to teach students how to read and write or how to speak. That starts much earlier. And so we need to learn where to put emphasis on the blame. But I want to point out like this, that industry plays a major role. One of the things that I benefited from after Form 4 was that I got a chance to work. After Form 6, I got a chance to work. In university, I got a chance to work at a top multinational as part of my internship. I want to say that the university only gives you the basics. The rubber meets the road when you go to actual work. And having been in the industry for some time, I know one thing, that whenever a student comes from university, you have to spend basically the first 2 years teaching them the ropes. What we need to be looking at is, how can we get the industry to play a major role? Let me give you an example. In our admission system, the so-called, the University Placement Board, whenever you miss to succeed in languages, you fail to get a good grade in Kiswahili, where were you pushed? you were always sent to Moi University to study forestry. And what has happened is that we have lots of forestry graduates, but very little forest cover. Because you are being sent there as a punishment than as a passion. If you go to Mondi or Sapi in South Africa, from Swaziland border all the way to Johannesburg, you'll pass through thousands and thousands of acres of forest. And this particular organization like Mondi, when you enter a department, you're almost seeing probably 20 to 30 PhDs in the field of forestry. Some of them trained at Moi University. And today when you walk in, and what has happened to our industry, Webuye is down. We don't have renewable forests. But when you walk now into any supermarket today and pick printing paper, I assure it's either from Mondi or Sapi in South Africa. What do I mean here? That there has to be a very strong linkage between industry and universities. If, for example, you're training somebody at Jomo Kenyatta in automotive engineering, can you produce an automotive engineer without KVM, without Toyota? That link has got to be there. And what I want to point out is this. If you look at the commission, the statutes that set up the Commission for University Education, they define two types of degrees, especially at doctorate level. They talk about a PhD as a degree that mainly specializes in research and teaching to generate knowledge. Then it says other degrees. These are the Doctor of Business Administration, all others, Doctor of whatever. And it says, you know what, these are active research or knowledge practitioners, the guys now who pick that knowledge and actually apply it. And what more progressive countries have done is that they've got these guys working in industry. I would imagine today that if I'm a student of administration, I will do my attachment under one of the governors, probably, who is well schooled in that field, and I'll get first-hand experience in administration. So that's the same way we need to do it. We need to do it in a sense that when I am under supervision, I actually have a competent guy on the other side to teach me the ropes. So the whole idea about dilution, I think sometimes we misplace it. The dilution comes in because of the numbers, and Eric is actually from a technical university. And do you know, if you go to the CUE definition of a technical university, none of our universities today meet the definition of a technical university except by name.
Except by name. Let's have Eric come in on that.
Okay.
You're studying engineering?
No, Bachelor of Commerce, Finance option.
Bachelor of Commerce, Finance option. When you were going through, first of all, did you want to do commerce?
Yes.
Ever since?
Yes.
Did the system prepare you for commerce?
Somehow, but not fully. Yes.
What was lacking?
I would say I was not exposed to know my options earlier. Like, you know, you're studying Bachelor of Commerce, but it's wider, and you're not, that is not exposed to you early enough so that you can really identify the area that you'll focus on. Because in BCom, you have so many options. You have insurance, you have finance, you have accounting. So if BCom would have been a little bit, you know, brought to you earlier, maybe you could have considered another path. Unlike when you're being told that you're ending this semester and next semester you're supposed to specialize, and you have no idea of the options that are available for you. Yes.
If given an opportunity, would you change? I'm just asking. If given an opportunity, Eric, would you change?
No, I would change.
You wouldn't change.
Yes.
But look at this. Look at where this conversation is leading now. Data, statistics indicate. You see, we have had significant growth, you know, at the tertiary, at the university education level in the last couple of years. Do you know, data says that over, I think it's over 78 or over are registered in the humanities, social sciences courses. Only 6%, and this again should shock us, only 6% of university students are in the courses of science, engineering, and technology. And yet we know that those are the drivers of today's economy. You look anywhere in the world, you look at the first world, you look at the most developed countries, they basically are countries that have concentrated on science, engineering, and technology. So even though we self-congratulate ourselves and say we now have very many universities, the question is, are we strategic enough so that at a very early stage we create the structures that facilitate us, to move our students, first of all, to realize their full potential, and that they can have a wide array of, subjects, disciplines they can choose from, but also be very intentional about our dream of the future, and how we intentionally develop interest of science, engineering, and technology at a very, very early stage. Yes.
I'll hold if Eric and Emmy would allow me, and I stay with you, David. And now I'd like us to look at the issue of textbooks. Yes. What is happening? What to the prices especially?
Okay. Let me just give you what's happening with movement of the costs of the inputs for production of books. Now, last year alone, and this data is central bank data, and the data that can also be verified at the Bureau of Statistics. Number one is that the cost of the main inputs, which is paper, inks, glues and all that, went up by 11%. Now, the cost of labor, and this data can be gotten from the Federation of Kenya Employers, it went up by 7%. The cost of other inputs, overheads like electricity, water, insurance and all that went up by 4%. So the total increase in terms of the factors of production went up by 22%. Secondly, is that Emmy did mention that we actually net importers of paper. We, Pan Paper Mills was the only, paper milling company. We had it collapsed a couple of years ago. And we are net importers of paper, and even all the other raw materials that go into the production of books. It means, therefore, that because of those are inputs, including the machinery is imported, it is subject to the behavior of the Kenya shillings against the major currencies. Now, last year, the Kenya shilling depreciated by 24%. Again, that's a real fact. Now, so the total increase that publishers should have actually increased books with was 46%. Now, but as publishers, we know that we have to be responsible. You cannot, give such a shock, to parents, and it will not be fair. So what publishers have done again, is to completely reduce the margins and only increased textbooks in the marginal percentages of 4 to only 10%. And this was not across board. The only books whose prices were affected are the books which could not otherwise have been produced if there was no marginal increase, because again, you cannot produce, a product below cost and sell it. Otherwise, you would not be in business. So it is only that. So when you look at the Orange Book is the list of approved titles published by the Ministry of Education, and those are the titles that have gone through Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. They have been, approved for use in basic education, and there are about 3,700 titles, or slightly more than that. Only about over 200 titles, slightly over 200 titles, faced a price increase of 4 to 10%. So you can see it's thickening, very thin margins. Let me be quick to say that obviously when Kenyans have been burdened so much on so many fronts with so many rising costs, the cost of living is so high, many businesses have suffered. Many businesses have shut down. Last year alone, we saw quite a number of bookshops shutting down because there is no demand for books. And many publishing, the book industry is in recession as we talk now, because the effect of the last 2 years, especially after the increase where the introduction of VAT, has been very, very devastating. So now let me say what the real problem is. The real problem is actually the VAT Act of 2013. The VAT Act of 2013 included books as vatable items. Now, let me state, number one, that Kenya is a signatory to international protocols that commit not to tax books. The first one is the Florence Agreement, and the second one is the Berne Convention. And the reason for the requirement for countries not to tax books is so that you give, the education being a very basic right, you don't want to raise the barrier to access to education or to quality education, because books are the key input, you know, to the education process. Now, if kids go through school without accessing books, it will show up. Now, so we are signatories to those conventions. We have gone against them. Number two is that the rise, the 16%, is not just an increase of 16%. The cumulative effect is close to 30%, because we are net importers of all the raw materials, so they are taxed at the port of entry. And then when you manufacture the book, then it is taxed again at it's taxed at 16%. Then there are other variables like energy. In 2013, the VAT rate had been 12%. It went up by 16%. So again, another cost of production, because printing machines run 24 hours.
They do.
So that went up again. Now, so the cumulative effect is close to 30%. So that has everything to do with government. Now, government can't turn back and blame anybody else for a mistake that it has committed.
For a choice it made.
Can I quickly say this?
Yes.
That in Africa, Kenya is the second country after South Africa to put VAT on books. We know the history of VAT in South Africa. That history is a bad history, because it is ensuring that blacks do not access books and education. And it was meant to, blacks during apartheid had a very different system of education. And the reason for VAT was to just make it impossible for them to access knowledge and education. And we are saying that we as a country should not be that retrogressive, and it is also unconstitutional, because it denied people to a very basic right, quality education and access to books.
And really it's a double standard. On one hand, you make education free, I don't pay fee, but on another, I pay dearly for buying the books. Emmy, coming to you, are we putting the pressure where pressure needs to be? Because the headlines, as the splashes, are all about head teachers, they're all about publishers, but are they the real problem when it comes to the issue of education in this country?
I would say yes and no. Like David has said, that we are a society that thrives in chaos. But the difference is that in Kenya, we like to create the chaos and try to manage the chaos after that. And that just doesn't work.
Gives us jobs.
Let me give you an example. Like if you look at the stakeholders in education, you've got the unions, you've got the ministry, you've got the parents, and then you've got another arm called the Parents Association, which I don't want to pick up on. And the ministry suspects the unions suspect the ministry, and the parents, as a parent, we suspect both of them. Now, but I want to point out that the three of them have the best interests of the students at heart. But we need to stop talking at each other. I used to ask myself when Wilson Sosion one day would go to Jogo House and for some reason end up with CS Kimonyi in a lift. I don't know what would happen between the first and the fourth floor. We like to personalize issues. And it's not about personal issues. It's about the drivers or the challenges that face the system. And why do I say that? Look at Finland, which currently is ranked right at the top in terms of education, in terms of the performance. Their kids go to school only at the 7th year. But at the end of the 7th year, the kids know how to read and write just after the first year. That's the end of the 8th year, when 7 years up to the 8th year. Finland, interesting enough, the most respected and the most trusted person in the Finnish society is actually the teacher. In the US, it's the doctor. In this country, we have a challenge. The teacher is always fighting for his rights and is failing to be the role model that he was to. Right now, I can tell you, all my primary school teachers, who they were, I know them. Secondary up to university, it gets more vague. Those of us who went to school in the 80s, early 80s, we were taught by Ugandan teachers. I can name for you Mr. Kibuka, Kamulege, were my teachers. In fact, Kiwanuka still teaches at Mangu High School 30 years later.
Yes.
And we saw a lot of these guys go to Kabarak. These guys came to school to teach. They never came to school to work. And that's what we need to be restoring in our system. If you look at Finland, the top third of their best performers go into teaching. In this country, our top best performers, we want to put them into other courses up there. You cannot expect to pick the third bottom of your performance and make them to be the one to set your national agenda in education. We need to respect these guys. We need to give them the best. Now, why do I say this? In Finland, for example, the curriculum, the stress on the curriculum, first of all, they did away with the inspectorate. And that's why I was pointing out the inspectorate. The relationship between the inspectorate and our teachers is like that one of Kanjo and the citizens of Nairobi. It's a one of mutual suspicion.
Yeah.
It's one of, I will work when they show up. If they don't show up, I don't work. Now, in Finland, they remove the stress on the curriculum. And the curriculum, actually, the teacher has been given the opportunity to be able to determine how they will run the curriculum. What they have done is that they're given goals and outcomes. So they know exactly what the objectives are and what the outcomes are. In Finnish schools, for example, they don't have computer labs. They don't have stuff like technology like we want to do, but they are right at the top. Why? The only computers you'll see are the ones in the library, which are purely for your education. Finnish children, when you go to their computers, there is no what you call filtering system to stop them, say, from going to pornographic sites. Teachers will tell you that the filtering system is right in their heads.
It's right, yeah.
Finnish schools don't have class teachers. The entire faculty owns the children. And I've seen this actually done, I think, in one school in Pioneer in Maragua, whereby a kid can go to the staff room and go to any teacher to solve a maths question. You don't have to go to your subject teacher. That choice needs to exist. You remember the days when you walked through the village and every grown-up was your mother or father, every teacher was teacher. That's what we need to have coming back into our system.
Yeah.
And in terms of these, I'm looking at the stakeholders here. Can we stop talking at each other and start to address actually the issues that ail our education system? And that's why I want to point out that a lot of times when issues are raised, we tend to look at the person raising as opposed to looking at the issues actually being raised. Now, the issue of education here, look, for example, I talked about the technical education. We go up and set up technical universities. And then we do away with technical schools. 1 out of 2 good engineers, top-notch, in our time came out of Thika Technical, Kabete Technical, Kitale Technical, Machakos Technical. These guys were up there. Let me come back to the issue of chaos.
Yes.
I was in Dubai at the address downtown when it caught fire a few days ago. One thing that you would notice around there was the Swahili being spoken. Why? Because our hotel graduates are among the best in the world. They manage that place. I felt proud being Kenyan. What happens when Kenyans go out there and shine? One of the things I asked, why do you employ these guys? They say Kenyans think on their feet. They think we are well trained. Why? I interview students in the region for jobs, whether it's in Tanzania, Mozambique, Malawi, and all that. And I want to say that a Kenyan student today realizes that we're in a global environment, meaning that when there is a regional job, you'll be competing against a student from Makerere, from the University of Kinshasa, from the University of Zambia. It's no longer looking local. We've got to start thinking global.
Think global.
Yes. And now the challenge for me is this, that we need to start looking at the soft issues in our system. It's the soft issues that are pulling us down. It's not the hard issues. We have a good curriculum. We've got trained people. We've got some schools that are well equipped, some others are not. When you enter a university and you look at the checklist of the Commission of University Education, it states the particular facilities and to what standard that should exist in that particular university. Place. Could we do the same for a school? When I walk into a school, like for example, if I walk into a school in Tanzania, because of their socialist system, if there's an emergency, I know which direction. I know if I go left, there'll be a workshop. If I go right, there'll be a latrine or something. It is well designed and stated. We don't have the same thing today that if I walk into primary school A, I will find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 facilities because they are doing one particular curriculum, and I will find the other. Now, let me finish this. If you walk to Jamhuri High School, my neighbors here, Jamhuri has been producing some of the best artists in music, in the performance arts. I ask myself, why do they spend their time teaching chemistry and physics?
Good question. Yeah. Why do they spend time teaching chemistry and physics? Eric, what would you like to change in the education system to give people more value?
Just before I answer your question, I'd like to challenge Amy a little bit on the facilities that he said that are available in some of the universities. My question to you, Amy, is that why do we have some of the universities at some level, you find that students are studying, let's say, engineering. At third year, they're told that your engineering that you're studying is not accredited. So it's not even valid in the real world. So you have to stop maybe for 1 year until we we give your university credibility. So, and then another question is that you talked about the stakeholders that in the education system. We have parents, we have teachers, and then we have the students and the government. And a famous quote says that great leaders don't say, they show. So my challenge to the stakeholders is that they need to lead by example, because if the teachers tell us this and the parents say the other way, we will be confused. We will not even know where to stand.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I'll be throwing that to Emmy in a while, but back to the question.
Yes.
What would you like to see changed in the education system?
I would like to see so many opportunities. I would like to see a collaboration between the job market and the institutions that are there. Like at the university currently, you find that students graduate without even having that experience of what it feels to be in the job market. Amy said that he has an experience. He worked when he was in school. But that is not the case with our current universities right now. Some of them are not offering you the opportunity to have that test while you're still in school. And then when you get out there, you're just confused. You don't know where to start. You have a degree, but you don't know where to go. I know you're supposed to make an effort as a student, but also the education is supposed to help you figure out this whole world that you're left alone to think on your own.
To think on your own. David, on the question of textbooks again, have you received concerns of retailers and school heads colluding to intentionally, increase the price of textbooks?
Yes. Would you like me to make a brief commentary on your previous question? Now, my thinking about a good education system is one that not only helps students know how to count, that is the academic part, but a system that also shows and helps students know what counts in life. And that is the big dilemma, moral dilemma we are having in this country, where we are becoming a nation almost without a soul because of the huge drive towards academic papers, and it is papers by any means possible. Meaning that even if it means buying or cheating, like we have seen wide-scale corruption, at the exam level, the leakage of, monstrous proportions that we saw last year. So it is education at any means possible, meaning that you may have somebody who scores an A, but they have no soul. And that's why they will go and plunder the country, and that's a crisis we are having. So what I would want to see change in our and we are going through a curriculum reform. Soon the president will be launching, the curriculum reform process. We have a curriculum that has been there for 12 years. Best practice is that you have a review of the curriculum every about 5 years. That's really the best practice, and that's the commitment of Kenya. But we have not done it for 12, 13 years. Now, so my hope is that this curriculum, number one, will put education, learning, will make sure that the child will be at the center of learning. Today what we have is a teacher who knows everything, downloading their knowledge to passive recipients of this knowledge who are supposed to remember and regurgitate that during exam. And I think the examples Emmy has given, if you look at the process of education, is really what you call competence-based education. It's child-centered, and it is a discovery process, meaning that when you learn that way, it basically sticks. So that's one thing that I would like to see happen. Now, coming back on the textbooks, yes, we know that there are instances it is not celebrated as they should. and if there is one profession that should be celebrated and lauded, is the teaching profession, because none of us would be apart from passing through the hands of some teachers who have helped us understand ourselves and shape our path. And I too want to give honor, to my teachers from primary school, all the way to the rest of school. Now, the thing is that within every profession, there will always be some crooked people. And we know that whereas, there are some teachers who are honest and they do their work diligently, there are some schools heads who have defrauded our children, stealing the dreams and the future of our kids by colluding with some rogue booksellers. Again, there are many good booksellers, but there are a number of them who are, briefcase booksellers, and a number of them who just do business crookedly. Now, and they collude, and what happens is that, they pass papers, an order is made, delivery notes are signed, but no books ever go to the school. And this is corroborated by the evidence that when government disburses the funds, to schools, you know that funds have been disbursed at this level, but when you assess the number of books that have been bought that term, they have been bought at probably a fifth of the budget that was disbursed by government. The question is, where does that money go? And it is that collusion. Now, we know that there are, we've pointed this to the Ministry of Education. In previous years, there have been some interdictions where there was credible evidence to show that, people, some head teachers did not purchase books. So there is collusion at that level. Now, the second problem, and especially with, say, like with VAT, which pushes the price of books up, is that when there is a perception that books are high and the cost of books are high, what happens is that the black market, basically takes over. They steal intellectual property. They basically will come reproduce your book, and then they will sell it, try to sell it cheaply, and they will again collude, with, and sell those books, under. And the problem with that is that the quality of education will be compromised, because sometimes they may reproduce books as they are, and sometimes, of course, they do not. They reproduce older editions. Number two is that KRA has been complaining that they've been collecting fewer and fewer taxes. It's because when you raise the bar so much, then you give rise to the black market, which never pays any taxes.
Which never pays taxes.
It doesn't pay any taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
And therefore it becomes a problem.
It becomes a problem.
Emmy, we're bringing this to a close.
Yes.
So what solutions are in store? What solutions can we put in place to remedy this problem with our education system?
As we come to a close, I want to point out a number of things, some raised by my colleagues here. That one of the issues, like, for example, in terms of stakeholder engagement, we need to look at the soft issues. And I think one of the biggest challenges with CS Matiang'i is not going to be the hard issues, how to develop the relationships and persuasively move the process forward. Secondly, in the last budget, the finance minister took a bold step to ensure that companies will start having particular tax benefits when they take on interns. For the simple reason that companies don't want to bring in an extra cost or people to snoop into their figures if they don't trust them, if they don't feel part of the organization. And that's a big plus. Now, third, another one that my colleague raised, Eric, is the issue about quality in terms of numbers. I would say the numbers that we have at most of our universities currently are sustainable. We just need to be a little more creative with the facilities that we actually have. A good example, if you give me, look at, there's a college in Uganda, it offers courses called Midnight Express. If you go to the University of Nairobi, at the School of Architecture, just right across the road here, after classes close, up to morning the facilities are idle. Somebody more creative came up and he went to a college and requested for the college, entered into a contract. And between midnight and morning, he takes over the college and offers the same courses at half the cost. That's creativity.
Yeah.
Why should we be saying we don't have particular resources? It's just important that we get a little more creative about that. The other issue here is this, like I talked about the case of Finland. We are having a case of a kid who has been in school for 8 years, and the fate of that kid will be determined by a 2-hour exam. Whether that is adequate or not, the jury is out.
Jury is out.
Now, we can look at it differently. In Switzerland, for example, they asked themselves, the American system is like our system, whereby you put a Christmas tree and you keep decorating it. You keep adding and removing.
Yeah.
We need to ask ourselves, do we need a Christmas tree at all, or do we need a Christmas in the first place? And what they did with the education system is that the education system runs every 6 weeks. Then the kids are examined. Then they are allowed to move to the next level and then examined, and then move to the next level and examined. When we were in high school, we had these particular teachers who would not turn up in class. But they were very good at what we used to call timing, like in biology. He would know that last year you operated on the rat, this year was plant classification. Then he looks at the syllabus and knows next year will be the cockroach. So he tells you guys it's the cockroach. So we would study the cockroach.
Yes.
When the exam power comes, you pass.
It's the cockroach.
It's the cockroach.
Yes.
And we were so proud of such guys as compared to the very hard-working ones.
Yeah, yeah.
What I want to point out is this. We need ethics. We need to go back to the basics. But most importantly, we need to separate the important from the urgent. The urgent are always making noise. But the important are left resting.
Great. Eric, very briefly, your parting shot.
Okay, I'll say that I believe that education purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open one. It is not to make a student cram all the content that they should know, and then they come to do the exam, they download it, and then after that, they forget everything. That is like using your mind like a memory card. You just upload, you download, after that it's useless. So we need a system that we can actually go with the transcripts instead of this final exam that keeps makes students so anxious in that they can actually cram the entire book and then do the exam and forget about everything. The transcripts would do better because this is a continuous assessment of who you are. At the end of it, it will show your strong points, your weak points, and then when you get out now, someone who is looking at you will be able to say, this person is good in this area. And by doing that, you'll find that people are operating on their strongholds, not operating on your weak points.
Right.
Yes.
Strongholds versus weak points. David.
3 very quick things.
Right.
Number 1 is asking the government, especially the led by the National Treasury, to review the VAT Act and make books non-vatable this budget cycle, the budget that will be read in June. Secondly, is just to call upon all Kenyans to move from talk and support the curriculum reform process, and the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development will be leading the nation in soliciting views on what kind of content, and probably even that may determine what kind of structure that our system may take in the coming years. And number 3 is also not to keep looking at government and everybody else and fail to recognize that we have a responsibility. Everybody has got a response. You see, no matter how tall your grandfather was, you have to do your own growing up. And people have got to take responsibility in acquisition of knowledge, and not spend so much on weddings and all that and find it very difficult to buy a book that is 300 or 500 shillings. We've got to do our own growing up.
Develop a reading culture.
Absolutely.
Pierre Lumumba said if you want to hide something from Kenyans, put it in a book and you will be sorted. Of course, the point of today's conversation, even as our panelists have rightly put it, number 1, David has talked about non-vatable, making books non-vatable so that at least the prices are affordable. Number 2, there is just a general lack of leadership within the education sector, and those gaps need to be breached. Then people need to talk to each other as opposed to talking at each other. That does hold, or that does touch on stakeholder engagement in the education sector. Let us marry the industry needs with education. Otherwise, we shall continue churning out minds that are not able to deliver effectively in the future. Let us be creative, and of course, let us have proper assessment structures that will deliver that which a young mind, is so much. Emi Darius Wanyama for your contribution, a consultant on human capital and education. Thank you so much. Eric Kimonyi, wish you all the best with your studies, even as you continue. David Wawero, Kenya Publishers Association, we shall be watching, and of course we wish you all the best, all of you, in both your present and future endeavors. My name is Samuel Njoroge. On behalf of Martin Mwanje and the entire crew, God bless you all. Thank you so much even for your birthday wishes. Tuonane kesho asubuhi na mapema on Good Morning Kenya. God bless you all.